What's up, Wall fans? What's up, Common Sensors? And what's up, especially Go Tell to the Brewery fans? That's right, it is me, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, coming at you with another Go Tell It to the Brewery beer review. Now, I'm ridiculously excited about this one. I've actually been sitting on this beer for a couple weeks now, waiting until I had time to actually shoot it, because I actually went to this brewery. We've done that before, and actually went to this brewery and loved their beer, loved the atmosphere and everything else. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's start with the beer itself. I have, for this particular review, what you would call a collaboration. Collaboration, that's right. A collaboration between McLeod Ale Brewing Company and Partizan Brewing. This is their Partizan Politiks Black IPA. That's right, Black IPA. If you're not familiar with black IPAs, I poured it in a glass for you, just so you can see just how dark that is. This is still an IPA. The difference on a black IPA compared to your normal traditional IPA is this is going to have more of a malty flavor, similar to a stout. However, it's not creamy, chocolatey, that you don't get that coffee taste like you do with a lot of stouts. You're going to get more of that hoppiness like you do with an IPA, but it's cut with a little bit of the maltiness, and it's a little smoother because it is closer to a stout than your traditional IPAs that are just full of hops and everything else. Now, as you know, as a Go Tell to the Brewery fan, huge on hops. I like hoppy beers. I'm just all about it. I've always enjoyed them. And this goes right into that same category because it does have that hoppiness. A little bit smoother, but I'm enjoying it. I would highly recommend checking out really any black IPA you can find, but especially if you have the means to do so, check out the Partizan Politiks Black IPA from McLeod Ale Brewing Company, as well as Partizan Brewing. So check them out. Now, I teased it a little bit. I really want to talk a little bit more about McLeod Ale Brewing Company. I am a huge fan of theirs. Thanks to a good friend, fellow common sensor of mine named Justin, who turned me on to this brewery and actually took me out there a couple weeks ago to the brewery so I could check it out. I was like, as soon as I found out about it, let's go check it out in person. Let's go do some tasting. So we went over there, and I cannot recommend this brewery enough. If you're in the Southern California area, especially if you're in the Valley, San Fernando Valley, head on over to Van Nuys. Look them up, do a little Yelping, a little Googling, whatever it is you do to find your locations, and check them out. Right there in Van Nuys, California. It's in the Valley, San Fernando Valley. Fantastic beers, fantastic atmosphere. This is one of those places where you can actually go in and get half pints, so you can taste a little more beer than you would at most places where they're making you get full pints. They also do beer flights. I'm not a big fan of beer flights because you only get a little bit of a taste. I like the half pints. I would recommend going the half pint route if you go there. And a little more background on it, what I do love about it is they have a ridiculous amount of investors. Now, I'm exaggerating that a little. They're not a ridiculous amount, but they have investors that came into the company after they had started, came into the brewery, and helped them to expand. So they have multiple owners outside of the original founders, husband and wife named Jennifer and Alistair, that founded it, but in order to kind of expand, get a little bigger, they brought in some investors, which I absolutely love. On top of that, they specialize, now this one in particular is not what I'm about to talk about, but they do specialize in cask ale. This is an English style of brewing. It's very different from your most breweries in the traditional sense. And I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but if you're not familiar with cask ales, this would be the perfect place. McLeod Ale Brewing in Van Nuys, California. As you can see, I like them so much, I even picked myself up a beanie. Picked up a beanie. They hooked me up with a little patch here so that I can remember where the heck I was enjoying all this great beer. But if you've never had cask ale, head on out to McLeod's Ale Brewing Company. Check them out. Check them out. It's worth the trip. Great prices. Bowls of peanuts on all the tables. And if you're into darts, I'm not into darts. They have a whole big dart section. They do dart tournaments and all that kind of stuff if that's your thing. Nothing against it. I just... Maybe we'll get into that one day. We'll get into a story about why real dartboards were not allowed in my house growing up. There's a little teaser for you. Check out Go Tell It to the Wall podcast, and maybe we'll get into a little bit more of that story. One last thing I want to mention about McLeod Ale Brewing Company that I thought was fantastic. They have a little thing called Buy a Friend a Beer. So if you go into McLeod Ale Brewing, you can actually pay for a beer for a friend of yours. They have a big chalkboard right behind their bar with all these names written on it. So if you want to buy your friend a beer, you pay for it in advance. You tell them, hey, I bought you a beer. Go check out McLeod Ale Brewing Company and get your beer that's already paid for. They go in, show some ID, say, hey, that's my name up there, and there's their beer. All kinds of great stuff happening at McLeod Ale Brewing Company. Check them out. If you're in the Los Angeles area, check them out in Van Nuys, California. If you're not, do a little Googling, see where you can pick up some of their beer, because I highly recommend. Everything I tried from there was fantastic. If you do go into the brewery, try the Hive Mind, fantastic beer, in addition to the Black IPA, which I think you can get at some locations because they do have these in the 16-ounce cans. So check them out. Check them out. Check them out, Wall fans. Highly recommend them. Can't say enough good things about McLeod Ale Brewing Company. It is probably one of my new favorite hangouts. I don't live in the valley, so it's a bit of a trip for me. I don't want to say it's crazy, but it's a bit of a trip. Otherwise, I'd probably be there every day. It's just that good. So check them out, Wall fans. And remember, whenever you're drinking McLeod Ale Brewing Company beers, wherever you're drinking them, whenever you're drinking them, whoever you're drinking them with, and whyever it is you're drinking them, whyever, we're making up words here at Go Tell It to the Brewery. Remember, always drink them with common sense.